All right, folks, welcome back. Harmless or homeless over here. Harmless, homeless Dave doing politically homeless. Yeah, I can't do the intro without saying that. Anyway, special guest on the show today. You may know him from long ago if you're an early follower of this channel. Probably 4 or 5 years now, Charles, right? We've been hanging out together. Charles Anderson is back with me. Charles, how are you?
Doing well, Dave. Great to be back on the show. At this point, I'm more of an infrequent guest. We used to do these a lot more regular. And as you mentioned, we go back a long way. Used to do a lot more YouTube stuff on my own, but time just hasn't really been on my side to get in and do all the editing. But, always great to be back on your show, talk about, what's going on in our wonderful world of politics these days.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we've got a lot of interesting things to go over today.
Well, I'm going to hit you with this. In the pregame, I was wondering if you had seen the State of the Union address, the SOTU, as some people call it. And you said you had seen bits and pieces of it. And I was wondering what your hot take was on the elderly man who was speaking very, very fast and very loudly. I mean, he really exemplifies the guy on the front lawn yelling at pretty much the entire country.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing just to go ahead and get the full disclaimer out there. And it's just, I couldn't bear it, man. It's like, I got to go to work the next morning and I don't want to have to get drunk enough to be able to sit through this without being miserable. Like, if I could have turned it into a drinking game of how many times Joe Biden gaffes, I would have been 3 sheets to the wind probably that night. Because and everybody's making just memes, jokes about how the State of the Union went, and my takeaway from it is there any wonder why people are starting to forget, or at least say, I don't care about what mainstream media is saying about the whole January 6th and Trump's going to be this and Trump's going to be that.
Yeah.
You have this walking mummy giving the State of the Union address to the nation. And the guy, honestly, I'm starting to get, not that I'm a fan of Candace Owens, but I'm starting to really get on board with her. If you happen to catch the debate with her and Cuomo on the PBD podcast,
okay,
I'm with her, man. Ritalин's got to be a hell of a drug. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so
Adderall.
They've got to be they got to be shooting this guy up with something to just get him to barely be able to function. But I mean, good Lord, we have already tarnished our reputation enough as a nation for the last few decades in ways anyway. I mean, we had the wonderful years of Clinton, which, to be fair, okay, the economy hadn't gone to crap yet.
Right.
But we had the big, Monica scandal and how that took over the media. Then we got the lovely 8 years of George Bush. And my God, weren't those memorable times? I mean, we had reporters throwing their shoes at our president.
Okay? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That was the shoe gate. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we got, good old GW out here trying to play the bongo drums. Okay. We have slowly been morphing into a parody. We get past Bush, we get to Obama. Now, I guess Obama didn't buffoon himself on the world stage the way Bush did, but he definitely didn't do our country any favors as far as our economy or anything else.
Right.
He didn't fulfill any of his promises.
Correct.
And then we get to Trump. Okay. Now, like Trump or hate Trump, let's just examine this for a moment.
Okay? All right. It's fair.
Trump was a game show host. And whether you like what he's saying, let's examine the delivery of what he's saying. Why do you think there are so many TV hosts and comedians trying to mimic Trump? Because it's almost comical the way the guy talks, the way the guy presents himself. He's got the wild hairdo, the orange looking tan. I mean, Come on. I mean, look, and I'm not here to just Trump bash.
No, I
Okay.
hear you.
There are things Trump did in office that I agreed with. I liked what he did. There are other things I didn't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, where are we going as a country when these are the leaders that we are electing? And then we get Trump out of office, and now, we've got, this, demented death rattle of a president. It's if you've ever seen the band Ghost perform,
Yeah.
um,
Oh yeah.
they've got
Yeah.
this they've got this little skit where the I'm, I'm trying to keep this concise because I could go on a whole tangent, but basically they've got the real old guy that they bring out, and he's supposed to be like dead in the casket, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to do a whole skit with him, and they come out and they get the shock paddles out and they get him ready and they zap him, and he jumps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they touch him again, they zap him one more time, and then finally he wakes up, and then he comes out and plays the tune on the sax real good, and then he goes back in the casket. That is Joe Biden.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. I
Is
call him the
almost
corpse. I call him the corpse in chief sometimes. Yeah.
exactly. It's like they just got to go out and Frankenstein this guy to get him to go out and perform.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the more clips, it's getting to the point, Dave. I have no love or sympathy for a lot of these corrupt politicians. Joe
No.
Biden part of that list.
Mm-hmm.
But it's getting to a point to where, okay, on one hand, it's almost laughable, and on the other hand, it's like, let Grandpa go retire already.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? It's
Both of
getting
them.
sad.
Yeah, both of them. Both of them. The other
Yeah,
guy
I
can
know.
go. He's got Mar-a-Lago. He can hang out, and have all the rich people come down there and hang out with him. All the women, on the side that apparently he is partaking in. Even at this age, I don't know. I saw a picture of him and Laura Loomer on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and he's got his arm in a place that if I had done that, my wife had seen me do that. Charles, I don't know if my arm would still be intact after that. Maybe a couple other body parts, but he's Donald Trump, man. He can grab him anywhere he wants to, grab him here, grab him there. And, we got our kids watching. I got a 10-year-old, and he comes up to me. He says, Dad, do you like Donald Trump? And I said, no. And he says, well, what about Biden? You like him? I go, no. So it's like we have, and I say this, and people in the political world, they don't care, because we've gotten to the point, Charles, where it's this tribe taking on this other tribe, and this tribe over here is immoral, right? And the other tribe is immoral in a different way. And so you have to this is a battle. I heard a professor tell me this in college one time. It's a battle between the lesser of two lessers, right? Instead of the lesser of two, it's like you've already got a lesser here and you got another lesser. And so this is what you're giving. You're like, here, America, here, make a choice. And the MAGA people are very upset all the time about everything. And again, some of the people in Joe Biden's camp are upset with Donald Trump and everybody who is following him all the time. And before we started the video, you asked me how I was doing, and I'm doing all right. And I'm not attributing that to who the president of the United States is right now.
No.
I'm just saying I'm doing okay. I got gas in the car, the food in the pantry. I got my kids are healthy. I'm fairly healthy. And so I look at my life and I go, okay, I'm doing all right. But you look at the world, and the world is just unraveling, Charles. So there's just the rhetoric and the social media and the news media. I mean, I don't know if you feel this way when you go out in public, but do you encounter people like this, or do you find people are typically, if you ask them on a personal level, hey, dude, how you doing? And they're going to launch into, oh, I can't stand Joe Biden, or Donald Trump is the biggest ignoramus that's ever lived. I mean, maybe you get some of that, but how are you doing personally? You know what I mean?
Yeah. You touched on something very, very true. Most people that I meet and talk to, when I ask how they're doing, they don't go into the politics. They talk about just regular everyday life.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I grew up around these folks my entire life. One group who will give you that answer are a lot of truck drivers, especially.
Yeah.
And one thing that I attributed it to is, man, because my dad was one of them. They listen to the talk radio almost all day long, a lot
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
They don't
Driving.
listen
Yeah.
to as much music anymore. They listen to talk radio. So it's just, you know, Glenn Beck or whoever's on talk radio. I know Limbaugh passed away a few years ago.
Yeah. They got those
Um,
two guys who replaced him.
yeah.
I can't even think of
Um,
their names, but that's how good they are, you know.
Sean Hannity, if he still does it, I know my
Yep.
dad used to listen to him a ton.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hannity goes Hannity and
Yeah.
Mark Levin. You know, if you last the
Hmm.
entire day, you get Mark Levin at like
Right.
6 o'clock at night. So he can rant
Yeah.
and
So,
rave and talk like this about everybody, you know. So yeah.
so when you listen to stuff like that, you know, all the time, you might ask somebody like that, and they'll go straight to the political stuff, or any other, you know, it might just be like the political junkies, I guess they call them, lack of a better term. It's all they do is follow politics. You know, if you ask that person, maybe they'll give you that answer. But there is one thing about it though, and again, I'm kind of like you. I've been doing all right. But one of the reasons that I had to get away from doing my YouTube stuff was, as I said earlier, just the time on my hands. Part of that was taking the new job that I just did. Now, in all fairness, give you a little, because we're talking about how everybody's doing in the current time. Okay. Two and a half years ago, company I work for came out with a pretty substantial raise for everyone. And
Mhm.
we've been looking forward to it for a while. Now, me and my wife, you know, give a little backstory and everything. We were planning on getting a few things paid off and starting a family, having some kids. And I said, okay, this raise will be real good to help with that. And the other thing, Dave, is we never went underwater. But when I'm talking a raise, I'm talking like $5 an hour raise.
That's
Now,
good.
$5 an hour raise, okay, 40 hours a week. You're talking $200 a week before the taxes come out. Times four, you're talking $800 more a month. Now that should be doing something. Let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you something. Me and my wife, we budget our money. We don't, you know, live beyond our means. We don't spend to excess. The effect was almost nothing.
Because of
Why is
inflation.
that?
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So some folks, me, you, a lot of others out there, have been just fortunate enough to stay just enough ahead of the mess that we're able to live comfortably, almost comfortably, whatever. But now you take a look at it. Okay, here we are 2.5 years later, and we're back to being close to a paycheck to paycheck margin again.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, and so I got a promotion to take another job. Now, this time, pretty substantial. We're talking, you know, over 20K a year higher than where I was
Nice.
before.
Good for
So
you,
it's
man.
like, you know, hey, you got to do what you got to do to try to take care of, you know, support your home, your family.
Right.
Trade offs. You're a busy guy now. I'm not hourly anymore. I am salary. Hey, I mean, it's worth it, but there's a lot of travel involved. Like just in the last month alone, I've had to go to Chattanooga, Tennessee twice,
Yeah.
once for like a week and then once up and back in the same day, which to
Wow.
give you an idea, it's like a 4 to 5 hour drive one way. So,
Sure.
you know, it keeps you busy. But so it's kind of affected me to do a lot of these things. But I say all that to like explain, think about what's going on with the rest of the country. You know, they're talking about wanting higher wages, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what our leaders are getting us. They're driving inflation through the roof.
Yep.
Cost of living is going, you know, insane. They've already had numbers calculated. And again, you might be conservative, you might be liberal, you might believe in socialism, you might believe in capitalism. I don't really care what the economic theory at this point is. They're driving inflation up either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
If you're going to spend millions to billions to trillions of dollars and drive our inflation up and make our own lives more difficult financially on a daily basis, why in the world do we not have more people? And I think we're starting to get there, but why are there not more people going, damn, man, spend the money here,
Right,
do
right.
something here?
Yeah.
I think they've estimated, what is it, so many million or billion within homelessness, and they've already spent 3 times that much in Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we've got the Israel stuff going on, and of course in that lovely State of the Union, kind of almost but confirmed we're now going to get on the ground in Palestine, right?
Yeah, I know. I know, brother.
I mean,
I
it's
the war thing really, because I'm not a foreign policy expert, and I've gone down both rabbit trails. I went down the rabbit trail with
mhm,
Ukraine, and I really took a hard look at that. And there are a group of people, and it's a pretty substantial group of people in both political parties now. I don't want to call them war hawks, but they're war funders. They think
mhm,
that our place in the world, we need to be, I don't want to even say the world's policeman, but maybe that's the correct term. Um, but we need to be involved. We're part of NATO, and we're kind of like the de facto head of NATO. So when something happens with a country, and by the way, Ukraine is not in NATO, but they've been pushing and pushing and asking, and they've been
right,
hoping, but they're still not in NATO. And then you got to look at Putin, right? What is Putin? What is his goal? At the beginning, I thought, well, he wants to demilitarize. He wants to kind of stop the fighting going on in the eastern part of Ukraine. I don't know. I mean, at this point, he's also spent a lot of time, a lot of treasure doing that. And so I don't
mhm,
know what his motive is, but to your point, right? To your point, the workaday lunch pail, six pack, whatever you want to call it, American guy, woman gets up each day and says, "What the heck are we doing? Spending all this?" Just a basic question, without like being a foreign policy expert. Just why are we doing that? Why aren't we doing something domestically? Like Biden had this infrastructure bill. Good for him. It's good. Infrastructure, we need it. It was kind of bipartisan. It had a lot of pork in it. Like all of this stuff has tons of pork, but at least I heard infrastructure. Trump did the CARES Act, which was wow. I mean, I don't even want to talk about the CARES Act because it opened up all kinds of things that Trump blames, other people for his problems. Well, he signed a bill that made it easier for states
mhm.
to vote during COVID, and everybody is just mailing in ballots. I would have too. You scared the bejesus out of 90% of the population. Yeah, I'm going to vote by, I'm voting by mail. And then we can talk about all of that. That would be a whole separate video. But the point
Right.
that you're making is a good point, because normally we call them normies. Some of us call them normies. I might be a normie to some degree, but I'm not, because I'm so plugged into this stuff. Normies go, okay, well, you're given all this money. And like you said about the socialism part, we have Medicare, by the way, we have Social Security.
Exactly.
We have a lot of socialistic things already in place. And you've got both political parties saying, you can't touch those things. And then somebody like a Rand Paul or Thomas Massey kind of raises their hand in the back of the room and says, can we have a little oversight on these programs? I mean, we're sending all this money to Ukraine and all these places. Can we? No, shut up, you. It's like, wow,
Right.
and that's not a guy who's saying we need to cut it, we need to eliminate it, which there are people out there who say we need to rein it in, because if we don't, we're not going to have it for future generations. So I get it. I mean, you must encounter, you're a blue collar guy. I'm don't interact with as many people as you do, at least in the outside world. But you can sense that there's this blue collar, and that's why a lot of them gravitate toward Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has convinced them that he's their guy. Like he's going to take
Yes.
care of these globalists and these people who are spending money on the wrong things. He's not, by the way, Trump isn't saying he's going to cut the budget. He's just going to reallocate the budget. You know what I mean? And put it toward things that these people feel as they're being left out and the priorities are wrong. And I sympathize. I agree with them. As George Bush would say, though, some of it's kind of fuzzy math, you know, and I don't know if there's a solution because we're not willing to make hard choices when it comes to budgets. So we just keep blowing the budget up, Charles. You mentioned the trillions, right? So, I mean, you can go, I don't know, I haven't looked at the debt clock, excuse me, in a while, but that's wild to look at it in real time and see, hey, there goes another $100,000. The debt, the interest on the debt, and it's accelerating because it's what they call compounded interest, where it just keeps accelerating. So what's the solution to that? Well, the solution is inflation. And you're saying it, I'm saying it. We're pumping more oil than we've ever pumped as a country, at least on the lands that are allocated to pump oil. But yet gas prices spiked to where I live. They're up around $3.50, $3.60 a gallon. They were down around $3. I don't know if it's the winter blend changing into the summer blend, or the Saudis were talking to somebody in the administration and said they're not going to pump as much oil. And by the way, we shouldn't be chained to countries that probably don't like us all that much for our sustenance, you know. So and these are basic things. You and I could sit around at a bar, have a couple of beers, and talk this through. And somebody would walk in and say, "You guys are making sense." But then when you look at Washington, D.C., there are a whole bunch of people there, Charles, that don't make sense, right?
No. It's, I mean, for one thing, you have a whole lot of, you know, geriatrics. I mean, look at what was going on with Dianne Feinstein.
Oh my gosh,
Senator Feinstein
just died,
and that's what I'm saying. I mean, Joe Biden,
Mitch. Don't forget about Mitch.
Yeah, Mitch. I mean, the guy just you know those old Windows computers where you started up and it made the little chime and played a little tune and then boom, because it crashed. Yeah, that's Mitch McConnell.
Mitch,
I mean,
some people are calling him glitch now.
I mean, the guy just froze and then he kind of came back and then almost like froze again. I was like, oh God, man, it's so embarrassing.
And you would think that would be it, right?
Something, right? And I mean, it's again, this was, you know, so good old Cuomo was debating Candace Owens over Vladimir Putin.
Which Cuomo?
On the PBD
was it
podcast.
Mario? No, I'm just kidding. It's not. He's dead.
No.
Is it
Andrew? It was Fredo.
It was from he's now on News Nation, by the way, the most fair and
News Nation. Yeah. So
Mario. Sorry,
but the gist of it was, you know, he's like, oh, why are you trying to praise Putin? Putin's such a bad guy, and he's blah blah blah. And look, I'm not going to defend Putin, but I take Candace's point well, and the argument she was making, which is, look, you don't have to acknowledge Putin as a great guy.
Right.
I'm not going to do that.
Right.
What you do have to acknowledge is that even if he's getting some age on him, he's still pretty sharp, or at least levels beyond Joe Biden.
Oh,
and to that point, what happens when you have these, you know, jitterbug phone, hover round riding geriatric politicians sit down at the negotiating table with someone who mentally is levels beyond where they're at right now?
Yeah.
If that's who's representing us, we're screwed.
Correct.
We're coming out on the losing end.
Right.
You know,
100%. And
they're probably just going to offer them, you know, some vitamins or, you know, some stool softeners or whatever, and then get whatever deal they want. Okay, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. This is who we have as leaders, and people, you know, are going to have to wake up and realize, like, I had some black pill moments in the last few years.
Yeah.
One of which is not that I didn't already know this to an extent, but I guess I just had a better grasp on it at the end of the day, which is we're in this big global game.
Mm.
And it's this big pissing contest. Who's got to maintain power? And I mean, good Lord, it's been going back for over, half a century at this point. The big power wants control throughout the rest of the world so that they can exert their influence and get what they want.
Yeah.
Okay. Eisenhower and the CIA were, putting a lot of their little puppets in charge. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Dulles was quite the character with the CIA.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
all I'm going to say. If you don't know who Alan Dulles is, you should look it up. Okay. But I mean, good Lord, they've been doing this stuff for so long. And so now, I mean, you think about it. Okay. Gulf of Tonkin, we go into Vietnam. Uh, 9/11 happens, we go into Afghanistan. Now, I want to make a little point on something because I don't know if this was by design. I have a hard time telling you more. Are they doing this by design or did they make a mistake?
Yeah.
Because these geriatrics that we're seeing are not the ones creating these plans. Even if the plan does seem like it was stupid, I am fully convinced there's someone behind the scenes, lobbyists, banks, uh, these folks are the ones that are writing out the strategy. They're the coach that writes the plays.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they just send Joe Biden out, to go be the quarterback of this thing. Let that sink in for a moment. Wouldn't that be a hilarious football game? But
yeah, would be bad.
And really, they write these plans. They want them to go carry it out. So here's where, again, was this intentional? Was it a mistake? 9/11 happened, and the country, 95% of it, rallied together.
Right. For a little while.
And when George Bush wanted to go into a war on terror, everybody said, yes, go do it.
True.
Okay. They wanted to do the Patriot Act. They knew they could never get away with it. But they changed the public's perception about wanting to be protected from the terrorists. And boom, they were able to get away with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to this whole Ukraine thing. They tried to gin the public up against Russia a little bit when Obama was in office, when he annexed, or when I say he, I mean Putin, annexed Crimea.
Yep.
There was a little bit of noise, but I don't remember anything really substantial. There wasn't some public groundswell of support to go after Putin.
Then just all of a sudden, right?
Right. And it just kind of fizzled out. Okay. But when Trump came into office, and I think we discussed this in the last video, he's too much of a wild card. Even if ultimately he's going to play ball for the status quo, which he kind of did for the most part in his first term.
Yeah.
You can't ever tell what's going to come out of his mouth. Okay.
I don't think he could tell either, Charles.
He just says the quiet part out loud. He says the things that they don't want to be said to the public. Right. And as you said, he talks about, how these politicians were all talk, no action. They're bought off. He was literally telling everyone that how rigged the game was, and I know because I was one of the people rigging it.
Right.
Even look, Dave Chappelle is not a Republican, but even he has to come out in his stand-ups and say, this is why people gravitate towards him. People, as we just said, some have been lucky enough to stay above the mess before it catches up to them and puts them in poverty and on the breadline. Okay.
Yeah, true.
Some of us are lucky enough to stay ahead. Others have not been. And those people were hurting. They were looking for someone to turn to. So they turned toward Donald Trump. Okay. And they turned toward him because of things he's saying. But the establishment knows his rhetoric is dangerous to their behalf. So what did they do? They hit him with Russia collusion. Okay. As we now know, the whole Russia collusion thing was a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, that first one was ridiculous. And it
Right. Trump was not, ultimately beholden to Vladimir Putin. Evidence of that is, my God, he got way more strict with Russia and Putin when he was in office than Obama was.
Yeah, that's true.
You would think if he had to do Putin's bidding, he wouldn't have been, as tough and arm wrestling him the way that they were when he was in office. This was mainstream media's thing to try to turn the public, so that ultimately they wanted, we're going to use it to get Trump out of the way. They use that in a lot of other things, Stormy Daniels included. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to get him out of the way. And now we're going to have the public pissed at Russia so we can finally achieve our goal now of going after Russia. We tried it a few years back, didn't work out. See, they do this stuff. So it's been on the book of plans here for a little while. They thought that just like with 9/11, and we go into a country that turns out the Saudis had more involvement in 9/11 than Afghanistan did.
Correct. Yeah, that's true.
But we went there anyway, and then we wound up in Iraq, and Iraq had zilch to do with 9/11.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but they were able to convince the public at first. They thought they were going to do it with this. They were going to get enough people to hate Russia to back their play. I don't know if they were intending or if they wanted to cause a divide, but ultimately they caused a divide. You had half this group over here saying yes, and you had all the Trump people that were very cautious of it, even from the get-go, because they're like, oh, wait a minute, what? Because Ukraine's a corrupt country. And then we said, Trump said another quiet part out loud. He spilled the beans on Joe Biden and his son's connection to the Ukrainian government and Burisma Holdings and the Hunter Biden laptop. So then all this base over here is like, oh no, something stinks here. Something smells rotten. Well, fast forward, they're losing grip on everything now. And that's why they're trying to kick Trump off of ballots. They're trying to, get him in prison where he can't become the president. They're doing all these things because they're in a panic mode. Why are they in a panic mode? Because they put this corpse in office.
And they did do that.
And this corpse has continued to, as we said, blow inflation up.
Yep.
And they didn't have public support long enough to ride out the wars that they're getting us into now. The public is now looking at how the economy was better when Trump was in office than it is now. So you can tell me he's a crazy guy all day long, but all I know is I could afford to put gas in my car and still buy my medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
and
I mean,
I can't do that anymore.
That is a very relevant point, as much as I've,
But just to kind of finalize that off, because I don't want to rant for too long here. Ultimately, they're losing support, and you can tell they're interviewing these people in the rural areas, the urban areas, the people, like demographics that have always tended to go Democrat, and you're starting to hear more whispers of like, now I'll go with Trump.
Yeah,
and they're starting to do something again, and I don't know if it's by. I surely don't think it's by design. But what they're not realizing is what's the lady's name that gave Bernie all the questions in the 2016 primary? Not Schultz, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Donna Brazile.
Yeah. I remember her. Yeah.
Donna Brazile has even come out herself now and admitted that this is a political movement. She saw the Reagan movement. She saw, all these political movements. She saw, though, this is a political movement. Donald Trump has a political movement, like it or not. Okay. And people who have been hurting are looking at what's going on. And the more they go after him, the more they try to prosecute him, the more these people who are fed up with the system because they believe the game is rigged, they're looking at this and going, well, there's got to be a reason they're doing that. He says things politicians don't normally say. He talks about things I want to hear, and they're trying to put him in jail for it. Wonder why. maybe this is really the guy we need. I mean, the more they go after him, the more they help him. I mean, the evidence is the guy's never done one debate in the Republican primary. And after every, charge that was brought against him, and after every debate, his poll numbers would go up.
Yeah.
He's
No.
not there to defend himself,
Yeah.
and they're trying to put him in jail, and more people hear the attacks on him and see more charges brought against him, and somehow more people go, "That's my man." I
Yeah.
that, it doesn't make logical sense until you figure out just how bad that society has gotten to the point that they're just clinging for someone for some hope somewhere.
Well, I mean, I agree. I agree with your analysis here. I know I've had a few run-ins because I've been a little more negative towards Trump. Not because of how people feel about Trump. There's a certain sect of people, though, within that subset who are saying wacky things like Trump has been sent by God and
Oh
he's
God.
been ordained and he's like King Cyrus in the Bible and all this stuff. And I struggle with that when, I live in the state of Florida and we had a guy who is, or we still have a guy who I think is Donald Trump on steroids. I think he's Donald Trump in getting crap done, but he's not charismatic. He doesn't have the right personality. He wears cowboy boots. I mean, his wife is too perfect. He's got this family and all this stuff, and I'm thinking to myself, so is it a cult of personality, or is it? And there are not a lot of people out there that want to get things done and kind of bring the country together. I'd love to hear your thoughts on RFK Jr. I watched his State of the Union message that he gave afterwards, and it was more of a very, I don't want to say Hollywood thing, but it was well put together because he talked and there was footage of certain things that accompanied what he was saying. I'll tell you, Charles, I was kind of moved. I felt like this is the America I remember as a kid, like people talking to one another about issues, and even if you disagree, you respect the other person's opinion. You don't just say, "Hey, I just owned Charles Anderson with my comeback, man. That's the most important thing. I got to own the libs. I got to own the right wingers or whoever it is you got to own." I mean, and I think to myself, maybe this guy is just too nice for the political climate that we're in. Maybe people want the WWE. I mean, Biden can't perform it. It's Trump is the guy who's actually had experience, literal experience with the whole wrestling thing. And I think I take your point. Here's where I take your point really to heart, though, is that middle America, the heartland, the working class, the people outside the Beltway, all across the country, even in places like, say, the eastern side of California, away from the coastline. These are people who feel as though nobody is listening to them. And so Trump will say something. Sometimes it's loaded. It's like a loaded baked potato, Charles. There's some things on there you probably don't want, right? But he's saying enough of things where you're like, okay, nobody else is saying that. Okay. And so instantly you go, all right, so then you connect, then you do the little brain. Well, why are they persecuting him in New York State about something that happened? And all of these real estate developers, I don't think the Bragg case is a relevant case because all of these real estate developers overvalue their crap. It's how they get the loan. I mean, right, it's like writing a resume, Charles, right? Like you're putting down, yeah, I did public service. Well, what did you do? Well, I helped Granny within the crosswalk. I helped her across the street. That was my public service. I'm putting it down, helped elderly woman with her daily life or something, It's embellishment. Is it lying? Yeah, I guess you have to ask God for forgiveness on that one. I don't know. But the bottom line is people feel like they're victims, right? And then they bring in Trump, who is running around saying, "I'm a victim," it's kind of weird because he's a billionaire and he's telling everybody he's a victim of everything. So there's two sides to that. But nobody's going to relate to Biden. What's Biden going to say to people to bring them along? That I've been in Washington for 70 years, and I don't know. I can't think of what I'm going to say next. And so that's the choice. It's the guy who
Yeah.
says throws bombs, and some of them miss, but a couple of them are on target. I'm not going to say that they're not. And then you got RFK out there, who I think, honest to God, I think that if he had substantial media coverage the way Trump gets it, Trump is the master at that. And Biden gets it because the mainstream media, they're obligated. This is their, I'm sorry to say it like this, but Biden is their guy. I mean, they're framing it like it could be the end of democracy if Trump gets back in the White House. It's the end of the world. And so here comes a guy who's like the peacemaker, who says, oh, I can bring Republicans, Democrats, independents, libertarians, whoever. I can bring them together and we can work together. And that's why during his little speech, I thought to myself, we could be a great country. We really could be a great country again, Charles, if we said to ourselves, you know what? Politicians don't define me. I mean, you and I had, when I was kind of on a libertarian kick for a while, and I agree with, you own yourself. I agree with that. And I think there's a portion of society, whether they're Trump fans or Biden fans, or probably more Biden fans than Trump fans, they believe that somebody owes them something. It's more than just leave me alone so I can succeed. Stop messing with the economy in a way that blows up interest rates, blows up inflation. Just stop doing that. How about $2 a gallon gas again, right? What was wrong with that? You mentioned, and I agree, that was Trump. Sorry to tell all the, anti-Trumpers out there, but 2017, 2018, 2019, even 2020 with COVID, the gas prices were kind of stable. They weren't going through the roof. 2021, Biden goes in there with his pen and goes, you know what? I don't know what he did, but I watched the gas prices go up. Like literally in real time, the first month he was in office, I'm going, shoot. I was going to use a stronger word there because I knew it. I knew prices were going to go up. Trump was good on some very important. Me and my wife always say, yeah, interest rates were low. We bought our house in March of 2020. We signed the paperwork the day they basically locked the country down. And the bank said, good thing you did it today. Good thing you did it today. We got like Charles, we got like 3.4% interest. And now it's 7, 8. That's thousands of dollars, thousands more.
I know.
It's crazy.
Look, South Carolina's cost of living is even now still pretty good compared to the rest of the country. Housing and everything is starting to go up. We're getting a lot of business moving into South Carolina, which is a good thing in a way. But to your point, I bought my house. Me and my wife, we got it in 2018. Somewhere between like a 3 to 4% interest when we got it, which, we had built our credit up, but we were still really young. So they weren't going to give us the biggest sweetheart deal possible. But we still got a real good deal. And I mean, we bought our 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, front yard, fenced in backyard, room for the dogs to run around. $65,000. Now, house is over $100,000 on the market. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's just where we're at. And I'm going to come back to the RFK thing, but you mentioned something that I just want to throw out there real quick while we're talking about that. As I mentioned, new job that I'm in. I was meeting with one of our clients about a week or two ago, and wage-wise, what they're paying people that we sent over there to work for them, they've kind of fell behind as far as like a lot of the other places we've got in that area. They're paying people, starting out 17, 18. This place still stuck at 15 an hour. And the work they're expecting of people there, it's not a hard job, but there's more, just say, physical activity than there are at some of the other places within a few miles of them, right? That we also service. And I finally had to tell them, because I mean, I'd been to the place before. I know what the people out there do. And I said, look, I said, I can agree with you that this isn't a hard job. And what you're paying these people, 15 an hour. I just mentioned buying my house in 2018. You know what I was making, Dave, at that job? $15 an hour.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
$15 an hour.
Yep.
Between me and my wife, we bought a house. No, you can't do it today.
Can't do it now.
You can't get by on that 15 an hour. That's how much the economy has changed within this 6-year period here. You see what I'm saying? It's
absolutely,
it's getting absolutely ridiculous. Now, to your point about RFK, because I know that was your question, I do want to address that. I know there's a lot of people out there trying to knock RFK on the whole Israel-Palestine thing. Do I agree with him every step of the way on it? I mean, look, I don't think Israel's got a spotless record, but as you said earlier, I'm not a foreign policy expert. I think that the Middle East has always been a mess.
Yep, I know where you're going to go.
Probably will always continue to be a mess.
Yep.
And one thing that I have learned as I have grown in age and wisdom over time is that it's never a good idea to stick yourself in the middle of other people's mess.
Yep.
You know, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to get the mess on you, and that's it. Yeah. Okay? There's one thing to help a friend. There's another thing to insert yourself in the middle of two people's drama.
Yeah.
And that never tends to end well. And hey, I'm not innocent. I've been there, done that. You know what? I look back on it, I was like, oh God, I wish I'd never done that. Okay. So I look at RFK just at face value. At this point, as you put it, the man has support from the independents. The man had support from Trump Republicans. He had support from Democrats, okay? He's more along the lines of what we really need. We need someone who can just talk to people and talk about their issues and talk about the things like me and you have discussed that isn't divisive and isn't, you know, saying these things that mainstream media can take and warp, like Trump said about our, you know, Hispanic friends, for example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gets
pretty rough.
I know. I mean, they use these things to create this problem. RFK, I think, would be, if I had to go with one of the three, like who would I vote for? Stick a gun to my head right now and say vote. And I had three options, and it were Trump, RFK, and Biden. I wouldn't be contemplating it. I would vote for RFK.
Right. Yeah.
Point blank. Period. We discussed this actually right before we started recording. I was out maybe about 2 weeks or so ago. Ran in the store to just grab something real quick, and as I was going to the front door, there was a guy out kind of roaming the parking lot with a pen and a clipboard. And I'm thinking this guy's going to try to sell me something. I'm like, oh, geez. So I try to even kind of skirt around him a little bit. He just comes power walking right on over to me. And I'm like, oh, geez, here we go.
Right.
And he walks up and he's like, hey, how you doing today, sir? He introduced himself, yada, yada. And he goes, would you like to sign my petition to get someone on the ballot for an election? I was like, oh, well, who's the person? He said, RFK Jr. And then my whole demeanor change. I'm like, yep, give me that clipboard. Where do I need to sign?
Right.
So he turned the one over to Spartanburg County. I'm like, okay, yep, here you go. Appreciate your time, man. Glad you're out here doing this. Because, yeah, I mean, me personally, I think RFK is a way better choice.
Amen.
If I had to, like, you know, they talk about ranked choice voting, right?
You would do RFK 1, Trump 2, and Biden 7th.
6. Yeah. Hey, yeah. Matter of fact, yeah, I like 7 better. Yeah,
Well, you could put
we'll do
Jill. What
that.
is it? Jill Stein, Cornell West. There's a couple other choices that you throw in there.
Yeah, Cornell
Libertarian
West would,
guy.
all of them.
Yeah.
I would be like those that Gen Z crowd back in 2020. I would vote for Harambe the gorilla before I would vote for Joe Biden. Seriously.
He's such a
I'm sorry.
bad.
I mean, well,
It's
I think the gorilla's going to have more intelligence.
well, Gorilla at
Seriously.
least has got self awareness. Joe didn't know who.
Exactly. And I mean, hey, and a gorilla is, you know what, Dave? They're the perfect embodiment for this because a gorilla is a peaceful animal 95% of the time. But when they feel threatened, they address it. They get up, they beat the chest a little bit, they let you know to back off, right? Okay, that's better than what we've got right now.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, because Joe Biden is not the peaceful animal. Joe Biden is the, old angry chihuahua that just wants to snap and snarl at everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's out here causing all this turmoil in the rest of the world, whereas the gorilla's not going to do anything unless he's provoked.
Charles,
I'm
I
going with
mean,
the gorilla.
if I was going to clip part of this video to make like a what do they call those things? A short. So make a short
Yeah.
that I might do that. I might get my phone out and just record you talking about the gorilla analogy because it's this is why we have you on, Charles. This is why I know you're busy, but every so often you gotta show up over here just to give your perspective because you are kind of a one of a kind when it comes to these takes. But
Well,
on the
I'll
serious,
give you one more for your short, real quick here. If I had a gun to my head to say I had to vote for Joe Biden or campaign for the gorilla, you would see me in downtown Spartanburg with a sign that said "Mighty Joe Young 2024." That's all I'm saying. I am not voting for Joe Biden. Not happening.
all right. Well, on that note, so you let's just unpack a little more on RFK, and then I'll let you go. I mean,
Yeah.
we already went over our half hour limit here, quite a bit. So RFK does this, I think, brilliant kind of State of the Union thing. I don't know if you've seen it, but his campaign was smart enough. See, I watched most of it, and I felt like I needed a shower. I felt like I needed to repent of my sins. I felt a lot of different things after watching that. But then I put on this hopeful, this optimistic city on a shining hill. And I look at this guy and I say, he's got a lot of his uncle in him. He's got a lot of his dad in him, and I'm not saying that because I want nostalgia. I'm saying it because there was a time, Charles, where Democrats, Republicans, independents, whoever, the two major political parties, they would disagree on stuff. But at the end of the day, it was like Ronald Reagan would go out and have a beer with Tip O'Neill. Like, hey, I don't hate you. I may disagree with you on, what to spend money on or how much we should spend or where we should send these troops or how we're going to do any of these things. But at the end of the day, Charles, there was this, hey, we're Americans. We have to put our country first. We don't put party first. We don't put personality first. Sorry, Trumpers. We put the country first. So I don't know if you had seen any of RFK's State of the Union response, but in general, even if you hadn't watched that, you got to admit it's refreshing to hear somebody not talking down to you, but just talking. You mentioned this. He's willing to talk to people. I mean, it's sad, but here we are in 2024. He's willing to talk to people. Wow, that's amazing, right? And it is. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree, and to the point that he's willing to talk to people, I will say I haven't had a chance to check out his video, so I'm going to need to do that. But when he was campaigning, this before he went independent, he was still trying to do the Democrat primary thing, which he probably would have tempted me to go back on a rule and voted for a Democrat in the primary, but But that being said, no, when he was campaigning against Joe Biden, he came to South Carolina. The guy held a campaign rally at someone's house.
That's awesome.
Okay. Like literally, is this lady over here, and it was in Spartanburg. I was lucky enough to be able to get over there to it. And it was in this lady's backyard, man. They had tables set up, chairs. He's up kind of up on a little patio area. And yeah, he held a campaign event for a crowd of some people in someone's backyard.
Yeah.
Like
That's
you think about that. That's someone who knows he's got an uphill battle, but he's not just kind of throwing his hands up in the air and just putting on a show for a campaign. This guy's like, this is RFK Jr., man. Comes
yeah.
from the infamous Kennedy family, and he's holding a campaign rally in a person's backyard. You
Yeah.
know, if Jeb Bush couldn't draw a crowd other than to have it in someone's backyard, Jeb Bush would just drop out.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Right.
If Chelsea Clinton ran for president and that happened to her, she would drop out. Which, first
Right.
of all, you wouldn't have to worry about that because mainstream media is going to promote them well enough; they'll get a crowd.
Right.
They don't
Exactly. Yeah. True.
That's he's battling against the media machine, who's, if they're mentioning him, only to smear him and then not giving him chance to respond or give rebuttal. Okay. But yeah, and even when people tried to attack him over his Super Bowl commercial, did you catch that one?
I did.
Where he
I
kinda,
saw the commercial live. I was actually watching the game when that came on.
yeah. So, to me, I like it. And I look at it like this. I think a lot of people, like you said, are looking at it from a nostalgia factor. I'm not going for RFK just because of JFK. For those who remember my show, a few years ago, I always had the picture of JFK up on the wall. And it's not like I thought JFK could do no wrong. I didn't agree with every move he made, but I think ultimately he was one of the better presidents within that time frame. And I think he was attempting to do a lot more good. And unfortunately, we know what happened there.
Yeah.
But that all being said, you mentioned the nostalgia thing, and then let's be honest, and this is where I'm at, and I think more people are starting to come to the realizations of this, that the things that people like BlackRock are paying to push in our face with this diversity, equity, and inclusion score and all this woke nonsense.
Yeah.
More people are starting to just get fed up with it. And people are really wanting to go back to a place in time where they were happier,
mm-hmm.
life was better.
Right.
Now, I've made this argument before, and there's always some liberal or some woke folks out there that, well, better for who? Look, you're never going to have a perfect world. That's
nope.
called a utopia, okay? Yep. But you can have something that's better for all of us than a lot of what we have going on today. And I look at it like this, okay? JFK was not a perfect guy. He was not a perfect president. Most records show he cheated and ran around on his wife. Okay, yeah, that's not good. That nothing is good about that. He had some policy things that were very questionable, just not downright wrong. Okay, he was influenced by people around him, just like many other presidents have been, and he made some bad calls. Some of RFK Jr.'s policies, not exactly the best. I don't necessarily agree with them, but a lot of them I do. And I look at it like this: what would be better for us as a nation, as a country, as a whole? This crazy corpse that they're, zapping back to life.
Yep.
Every time he needs to go on display, or the wild and reckless, old, wild, wild west mentality of Donald Trump, which, whatever he's saying, okay, you might agree with it, you might not agree with it, but it's ultimately, it's not a uniting message. It's only uniting for the people who can agree with him that the system is rigged, the blue collar middle class has been screwed over, that's really the only unifying message. But and then everything else is just it's rallying people up to
Well,
the
I
point
mean,
of
plus
near revolution.
insult. He's insulted some people deserve the insults, but the way
Right,
he does that, there are, we talk about demographics like the suburban soccer
right.
mom or the, just the white collar worker from some city or whatever. And Trump, you know who Donald Trump is at this stage.
Mhm.
You definitely got to, I mean, if you don't, then you've been under a rock. So
Exactly.
I'm I'm like, can we go higher rather than go
Hmm.
low? What was it? Michelle Obama said, or
When they
Barack
go
Obama?
low, you go high.
Remember? We know these. Why do we know these stupid quotes, Charles? But yeah, there was. I mean, it's a good quote. I don't know if those guys
And you
actually
know the
did it.
bad part of it, real quick, Dave. You know the bad part is I don't even know the quote because of Michelle Obama. I know the quote because of Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
Hillary Clinton. I just remember hearing it in that debate and the delivery. It was like, oh my God, tell,
Well,
tell me
see,
you're a
all
white
right.
you're a corny black lady.
Here's a news flash for Democrats, right? You guys run the worst candidates as I'm talking about as like people, as like political, like people who commute, like you had Hillary Clinton. All right, Obama, there's an exception there, right? Because he was a pretty good communicator. But then you run Hillary, who's okay, you just demonstrated what Hillary's about. And now we have the corpse, and the corpse isn't Trump. That's what they're running on. The corpse is not Donald Trump. Vote for the corpse.
No.
And I'm like, well, we get this other guy over here who, and he's made a couple of appearances lately. He was on Laura Ingraham the other night, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I'm not a big Fox News fan because they play games, but I mean, if I was,
Especially after Tucker.
yeah, that's true. Get rid of the one guy who's like pulling in all your ratings and has the one contrarian show on
Yeah.
your platform. You just buy because Rupert Murdoch is mad, or I don't even know. And here's the other thing too. They might be playing a game right now with RFK Jr. They might even be playing a game with Trump. Everyone says, well, they're pro Trump. I don't know about that. We'll see what they do toward the end of it all, how they cover everything, because the Trump people are still ticked off that they called Arizona like 4 hours before the polls closed or whatever it was in Arizona. People were still voting. And it's like, we project. No, shut up. Don't project anything. And did Trump lose Arizona? Yeah, it looks like he lost. But you have to play the game fairly, and the media, as we know, Charles, even if it's MSNBC, CNN. I know I mentioned to you News Nation, which is trying to be this alternative network, which they try to go down the middle. Of course, they have Chris Cuomo on there now, so you can judge whether they're down the middle or not. I don't know, but look,
down the middle, just like an ass crack.
this is why we have you on. All right. Well, listen, we better wrap this up. I would say tune in to Charles and watch his show, but apparently he's a working guy and he's got better things to do than these dumb videos. But I am I appreciate you coming on, Charles, because we've known each other for a while. We've had our ups and downs over the time, but I have so appreciated your perspective. And anytime, brother, you want to come back, you are welcome on this show.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Yeah. For the folks wanting to tune in and check me out, I'm going to just say this for now. The old Lone Wolf Ace channel right now isn't really doing anything at the moment. So if you want to see Charles Anderson, I tell you what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to stay tuned to Politically Homeless. Okay. And just wait until you see me make an appearance over here again. Now, maybe down the line, I might get back to something, but as of right now, this is about the only place you're going to catch, the takes of Charles at the moment is over here on Dave's show. So.
All right. Well, you know what? As this election gets closer, we're gonna have a lot of material, and
Oh God.
I'm hoping that more people will sign those petitions to get RFK Jr. on the ballot. If you haven't done that in your state and you know of a petition circulating, get involved. Find your local
Yeah.
chapter. There are people that are blowing up my phone already just because I said, yes, I'm interested in RFK Jr. I just did it one time, and somebody said, hey, we're having a meeting Thursday. I couldn't attend the meeting because it was short time, but I haven't made my decision 100%, but I am leaning very heavily in that direction. The no labels people, I'm kind of interested in what they're going to do, although I'm worried it's going to be, a neoliberal who's going to just sign all these bills and pass, trillions of dollars we don't have. But I have to see who they're going to put up there and what their platform is before I can just dismiss the whole thing. But anyway, Charles, brother, you're welcome anytime on this show. And thanks again for being here.
All right. Thank you again, Dave.